Now, one thing of note here is the gap between a value appreciation of a southern exposed unit and a western exposed unit is far less than the gap between a southern exposed unit and a northern exposed unit. What is the ideal exposure of a condo unit in Toronto? Let's get to it. Hello everyone, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate and Remax Realtron Realty. As always, you can find my contact information in the description box with regards to my Gmail, my Instagram, and my office. Feel free to get in touch with me via my contact info if you have any questions on topics covered in this video or other videos, or if you have any general inquiries about Toronto/GTA real estate at large. Lastly, feel free to subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Your subscription and support in terms of a thumbs up is much appreciated as always. However, you're not obliged to do so whatsoever. Feel free to dislike or not subscribe or, unsubscribe. But if you happen to enjoy these videos, your support is much appreciated. So enough of that, let's get to the point of today's video, which is ideal exposure for a condominium unit in the city of Toronto, or really truly we're speaking GTA, Richmond Hill, Vaughan, Markham, Mississauga, all that counts to me in my mind when I say Toronto as Toronto. So I put up a poll on my channel about 3 weeks ago, I believe, and I asked, the viewers of this channel what they thought the best ideal exposure is. Now the question was a little vague, because when I say ideal exposure, you can think of it in terms of your own personal use, or you can think of it in terms of what is best for appreciation purposes. And often, believe it or not, your personal tastes match up and line up to appreciation purposes. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what appreciates best is what the consumer seeks the most. So most likely your own personal tastes run parallel more often than not to what the general consumer seeks the most. But in certain cases, it's not a black or white answer. As you can see, I broke down the options into the main directions: no southeast, north, northwest, just southeast, west, and north. And as I said, your personal tastes can differ, and the question was a little vague. So some people may have answered this poll with their own personal tastes in mind. So the answers went from south was the most popular answer to east, west, north coming in last at 8% of the respondents. Once again, south was the most popular answer at 58% of the votes. Now, generally speaking, this is correct. I'll get into more details and show you some numbers as to why this is correct. But generally speaking, at first, southern exposure is what consumers love the most on average, and what appreciates the best. Now, this is actually quite good news. I'm happy because in the previous poll I posted on my channel, a lot of people were very wrong. I was surprised. It was actually the first poll I ever posted on my channel where the viewers were way off. So it's good to see the viewers rebound. Now, one obvious thing that needs to be stated is that context obviously matters. Like, this is on average, right? If you have a unit and it's southern exposed, but the southern exposure is a construction site for a condominium that is literally maybe mere meters away from your balcony, right? And this construction is not going to complete it for another 2 years. And still, technically southern exposure on paper, or in actuality southern exposure, but what you're actually exposed to is a industrial site or back alley of restaurants with a lot of garbage bins and trucks coming in and out, or once again a construction site. That southern exposure isn't better than a northern exposure where you have an overview of a pond or a small park or ravine, or even other buildings, but other buildings that show a good skylight at night. So context matters. Clearly, we're speaking on a general average basis here, and insofar as nothing is completely obstructing your view, whether it's western, eastern, nothing negative that negatively impacts value is obstructing your view regardless of the exposure. Everything else being equal, with regards to the unit as well. So we're speaking here in terms of, comparing a 1+1 that's 700 square feet that has had work done to another 1+1 that is 700 square feet that has work done, and they're both on the 5th floor and equidistant to the elevator, as exact as you can get. Insofar as we're comparing two alike units, southern exposed units on average, and these numbers are based on downtown Toronto sales. So we're only exclusively looking at C1, C8, and parts of C2. But once you take a look at North York and Midtown and the GTA at large, numbers there kind of map onto these numbers as well. But insofar as you're comparing two alike units in downtown Toronto, on average, units that are southern exposed go anywhere from 2,500 to 4,500 more than the alternative option. Now, one thing of note here is the gap between a value appreciation of a southern exposed unit and a western exposed unit is far less than the gap between a southern exposed unit and a northern exposed unit. Now, where you are in the city also matters as well, because we live in a city where there is a large structure called the CN Tower. So think about it like this. So if you are in the southern portion of the east side of the city versus the southern portion of the west side of the city, when you're on the southern portion of the west side of the city and you have a unit with a clear eastern exposed unit, you may have a view of the CN Tower. Vice versa, and alternatively, same thing with the southern portion of the eastern side of the city. If you have a western exposed unit, you may have a view of the water and CN Tower. In these particular circumstances, if you have a western exposed unit, for instance, that has a view of the CN Tower, in that building, more likely than not, western exposed units would go even to marginally more than southern exposed units. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Ask me any further questions you may have in the description. And lastly, stay safe.